So I've been letting my technique fall to the wayside recently, and it's about time I did something about that. So I'm really going to attack it over the next week or so. And I thought what I'd do in this video is talk about how I'm going to do that. So I'll talk about the specific exercises I'm going to be using, and I'll talk about my practice approach as well, and I'll talk about why I use that specific practice approach. Now, there's a bit of a cliche that you hear a lot as a guitarist, especially if you do shredding and things like that, and that's this: music isn't sports. And that's very true. However, there's a huge amount of crossover when you start to work on technique-related skills on any instrument and the kinds of training that elite sports people need to do. And that's really interesting, because if you think about the amount of money that's ploughed into professional sports and the amount of research that goes into training as professional sportsmen up to that elite level, we can steal all of those ideas and bring it to bear in our technique training on the guitar as well, and that's one of the things that I like to do. Now, one of the approaches that you'll see advocated a lot for elite level sports people, especially, as I say, if the sport has a high degree of technical content in it as well, is the concept of periodization. So with periodization, the idea is that you can't put a full amount of 100% effort on every aspect of the sports when you're training. And so you're better off, and it's a more efficient approach, to focus on one particular aspect at any one particular time, and then build a training cycle where each one builds on top of the next. And so what typically you'd see them do is they'll start with what's called GPP, or General Physical Preparedness. And this is basically building a foundation. This is building your strength. This is building the tools that you'll need to be able to perform at an elite level. So you start there, and then you start to add some of the sport-specific stuff until you work on the really highly technical aspects of the sport right at the end. But this concept of GPP training is something I like to bring to the guitar as well. And I like to think of the approach that I'm about to take as being kind of like that GPP training. Now, one of the first things you need to do is to decide where you're going to put your focus. Now, for me, it's going to be on my fast finger picking, it's going to be on 3 notes per string scales, it's going to be on developing that fluency, developing that speed again, and trying to get that up to something that's decent again. So that's where I'm going to put my effort. Now, you may not do this finger picking style at all. It's kind of irrelevant. You just need to pick an aspect of your training that you want to bring up, and then you can use that as the focus of your training. Now, for me, what works for me when I'm training this kind of technique is to do something which I like to call freestyling. Let me quickly demonstrate what I mean by that. So all I do is I just pick any particular key. So let's choose B, and there's my 3 notes per string scale in B, or at least one position. And when I talk about freestyling, I just mean taking it for a walk wherever you want. And it's a good idea to put some position changes in there. Yeah. And when you find something that's a little bit awkward, you can just keep working on it. But basically, you're just trying to get that connection between the left and the right hand, and that's what I'm trying to do here. Build that connection and start to get the speed and get the fluidity up, and that's what this exercise is really good at. Okay, so that's the exercise that I'm going to do. The next thing to do is to think about how you're going to structure your practice plan, what strategy you're going to use. Now, for me, with these kinds of technique areas, I find that volume is better. So the more work you put in, the more work you get out. And training density is better as well. So if you can put more focus in your time, if you can make better use of your time as well, then you get the best results as well. Now, the other 2 things that you need to be thinking about to temper that are: more is not necessarily better if you're going to start creating RSI. You don't want to create any injuries by training too hard. So it's important to think about putting rest time into this and figuring out how you're going to structure the rest time. And the other thing to be aware of is bad habits, developing bad habits, especially when you're working on speed, because it's very easy to put all of your focus on speed and to ignore the mistakes that you make and just keep making them. And that's where the bad habits come from. So all the bad habit is really, when you're doing this kind of stuff, is a mistake that you don't correct. And by not correcting it and by repeating it, you're getting a training effect on that mistake, and that mistake turns into a bad habit. So one of the best ways I know of dealing with this is a concept called wave training. And all you do with wave training is you start at a level which is within your ability, and then you slowly increase the load or the speed and push it to some threshold, to some limit area. And then when you hit that limit, you step back again. And the reason why you step back is it allows you to focus on your technique again. It allows you to correct those mistakes, and you do the same thing again. So you increase the rate, you increase the workload, and then you take a step back. And so that's why it's called wave training, because it's a bit like the waves. You know, when the tide's coming in, each wave is washing in and out, but the tide is coming in over time. And with this kind of training, you get the same kind of effect. Okay, so those are the principles I'm working with. How to maximize volume, how to maximize training density, considering rest periods in this as well, and using some kind of wave training. Now, all of that for me boils down to an approach that I've talked about in the past, which is using ramping metronomes. And these have worked really well for me because they cover all of these different aspects. So all the ramping metronome is, if you've never seen it before, is basically a set of videos. They're based on some software I used to work with a long time ago. And the concept is this: each video is just 10 minutes long, so that sets a practice period. Each starts at a specific rate, a specific beats per minute, and they all increase by 20 beats per minute over that 10-minute period. Now that increase in speed is imperceptibly slow when you're just playing against it as a metronome. You barely hear it, you barely feel it at all. But by the end of the 10 minutes, you can feel that you've actually sped up. And then at the end of that 10-minute period, you take a break. So naturally, it puts the rest periods into the practice cycle as well. And what I like to do is every 30 minutes or so, I'll take a longer break. So that's exactly what I do when I'm using these. The other thing I've found over the years is, from a training density point of view, when you're working with one of these videos, you can see that there's like a stopwatch on the screen. And that means you put your focus on it. You're putting your focus on the training video, you're putting focus on your playing. You're not being distracted by, you know, what's going on Facebook or this YouTube video or that YouTube video. You're focusing on your playing, you're focusing on the metronome click. So that naturally sort of improves the amount of training density. Let me quickly demonstrate how I use them. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm starting at an easy pace, something that's well within my ability, and I'm letting the video just slowly increase the pace over time. And while I'm playing on this, the other thing I'm focusing on is maintaining that lightness of touch. I'm trying to keep relaxed, even though the speed is slowly increasing. What I don't want to do is allow my hands to get in any tighter. I don't want any more tension in my body at all. So that's one of the things that I'm focusing on all the time while I'm doing this. I'm trying to keep as relaxed and keep my touch as light as I can as I'm progressing through the video. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm doing that up maybe 2 or 3 videos in a row I'll do, and then I'll take a break to give my joints a bit of space to recuperate as well, let my muscles recuperate, and then I'll come back and I'll do it again. And you can do that, you know, depending on how much time and space you've got, do that a few times over. So you can spend 2 or 3 hours if you've got the time doing this kind of thing. And you'll find it really will improve your technique really quite quickly. So that's it. That's what I'm going to be working on over the next couple of weeks, and who knows, in a couple of weeks maybe I'll do another video just showing you what I've achieved over this period of time. But give it a go. You may find it really useful yourself, and you may find it as useful as I do, which is one of the reasons why I put all the videos online. I've also linked to a website which just has links to all of the videos back to back, so you can start from 60 beats a minute all the way up to 200 beats a minute, I think it is, and just as individual videos, so you can just click on each one of those and progress your way through them as your technique improves. So anyway, hopefully that was useful for you, and we'll chat next time. Goodbye.